This Could Be Your Totem is critical commentary, cultural criticism, opinion, and satire. The subject of this episode is a structure, the engagement ring and bridal jewelry category, and the consumer behavior that's built around it. Not any specific company, brand, jeweler, designer, or individual. No real person or business is the subject of this episode, and any resemblance to one is incidental to the pattern being described. Historical references to diamond industry marketing, advertising slogans, supply practices, and spending rules are offered as general cultural commentary, an illustration in service of an argument, not as statements of fact about any particular present-day company or product. Figures are illustrative, not appraisals. And the figures and the ranges, the price benchmarks, the resale characterizations, and the spending guidelines are also illustrative and not appraisals. Nothing in this episode is financial, investment, appraisal, or legal advice. Nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, insure, or keep anything. This episode discusses money and debt, commitment, and the ending of relationships. And if any of it lands with what you're carrying, that feeling is valid, and you don't have to sit with it alone. Support resources will be linked in the show notes. There's a specific way that a person holds their hand when there's something new on it. You've seen it. Maybe you've even done it. The fingers go a little loose and the wrist turns just slightly, and the hand keeps drifting into the center of every photo that it could possibly find. Well, that's not vanity. Or it's not only vanity, let me say. It's closer to disbelief. There is now an object on your body that means something enormous, and your hand keeps lifting it into the light to check if it's still there, to check if it's still real, and still saying the things that it says. And here's what it says. It says, someone chose me. Out of everyone, on purpose and for keeps. It says, I am not available anymore, and I want you to know that, stranger in the grocery section, before you've ever even said a single word to me. It says, the most important question a person can be asked has been asked of me, and I said yes, and here is the proof. And that proof cost. Don't worry, we'll get to what that proof costs. But here's the thing that nobody mentions until you're turning your hand into that light. That object is, by a very credible argument, the single most successful piece of advertising in human history. Not one of them, but the one, the most successful. There's actually a 4-word phrase attached to it that an advertising agency wrote in the late 1940s. And that phrase quietly rewired what a few billion people believe what love is supposed to look like, and how much it's supposed to cost, and what material it should be made of. You think you're carrying a tradition, but in reality, you're just carrying a very good marketing campaign. Actually, scratch that. A spectacularly good one, and possibly the best one that there has ever been. But I want to be careful now, right here at the top, because this one is going to be a tender one. I'm not here to ruin your ring. If you love it, you get to love it. And we'll talk about why, because the why is very real, but we'll get to that. I'm going to show you how that thing got on your hand in the first place. Because once you get to see the machine, you get to decide on purpose and for yourself how you feel about the most photographed object that you will ever own. I'm April Rain, and this could be your totem. Welcome to This Could Be Your Totem. This is the show where we go looking for the objects that quietly own you. I do 4 questions every week. Is this thing an identity signal? Does it make you perform a ritual? Does your loyalty to it outrun its actual usefulness? And the big one, what hole had to open up in culture for this one object to matter so much? And today's totem is the engagement ring. The small, brilliant, wildly expensive object sitting in an exact intersection of love, money, status, and a marketing campaign so good that we mistook it for an ancient human instinct. This is week 4, and the whole week has been about love as a project. On the main feed, I did the healing boyfriend. That's the partner that you're not so much dating as renovating, and the relationship that's really a rescue mission. You know, that love runs on the belief that if you can't fix them, then fixing will finally make you the one who matters. Well, that episode is about the person that you're trying to save. But this one is about the object that you put on to prove that that saving worked. The ring is where the project goes to get certified because it's public, it's permanent, and it's on your body, witnessed by everybody. But I'm going to keep the brand talk generic. Well, mostly, the way I always do. Because there isn't one villain jeweler. There's a category and there's a machine. And the machine doesn't care which display case that you bought this ring out of. But this week, I'm going to name some history though. Because with this ring, the history is the whole story. And you cannot understand this object without knowing that it was, to an unusual degree, invented. On purpose. And by the same people who were selling the thing that they were inventing the tradition for. So let's start by doing the 4 questions. But I want to go slowly, because the slowness is where the recognition lives. And the recognition, not the warning, is the entire reason that this show exists. So this brings me to the first question. Is this thing an identity signal? So let's start with where it lives. Because the engagement ring is unusual among totems in that it is worn on the body, on the hand. It's actually the part of the body that does all the talking, that enters every room, that gestures and points. It gets photographed over and over and over again. You shake hands with people. You hold doors open for other people. And for every place that a status object could possibly live, this one chose the most visible real estate on a human body. And that's not an accident. Think about it this way. A ring you keep in a drawer would mean a fraction of what a ring on that hand means. Because most of what that ring does in all actuality, it does for other people. And what does it say to those other people, you might ask? Well, it depends, as it always does, on who's actually reading it. And to be honest with you, the engagement ring is probably the most read object a person will ever own, let alone wear. To a stranger, it says taken, spoken for, off the market. And that's an entire layer of social information that a ring transmits silently, instantly, and to people that you will never even speak to. And historically, that was actually the whole point. Because the ring marks the wearer as attached in a way that needs no conversation and no books and no argument. And we're going to get into how that history feels. Because to be honest, it feels like a lot. But notice the mechanism first. Because this is a claim worn on the body and legible across any room. Very few objects do that, I want you to know. But a wedding band or an engagement ring does. A uniform will also do it. But a wedding ring and an officer's uniform are actually closer cousins than we would like to admit. Both announce before you ever even say a word which structure you actually belong to your people. It says, oh my God, it finally happened. It finally happened. Or at last it happened. Or right on schedule it happened. The articulation of that particular phrase is going to depend on the friend, just so you know. But the ring itself is proof that the relationship cleared the bar. And it became the kind of relationship that ends in this, a ring. And if you will notice, there's a particular congratulations that shows up around an engaged person. It's doing double duty, actually, because it's celebrating you and then it's quietly sorting you. Because you've crossed over. You're in the category now. And that category, what does it do? It wears a ring as its badge. Now to your partner, it says, I meant it. And that is the warm reading. the real one, and the one that I don't want you to lose underneath all the analysis that I'm going to do. Because I'll be honest with you, for an enormous number of people, that ring is genuinely a frozen drop of a real feeling. Because someone stood in a store that they did not understand, they were probably sweating maybe a little bit, and tried to turn how they felt into an object. Because they had a feeling that was way too big to hand over directly. And that object turned out to be the closest available container of that feeling. That right there is not nothing. It's almost unbearably sweet, actually. And that's the thing that I want you to hold on to, because we're going to need it later. And to you, the wearer, it says something completely different. And it actually says the most complicated thing of all. Because that ring is the one totem on this show that you mostly didn't choose and you mostly didn't buy. It was given to you. Which means that every time you look at it, you're not just seeing a status object or a pretty stone. You're seeing that evidence that you were chosen. And being chosen is one of the most primal hungers a human being can have. To be the one selected. To be the one claimed. Wanted enough that someone would make it official in front of everybody. And that ring is that hunger answered. And it's worn somewhere that you can actually see it 40 times a day. Now the class signal, because we can't skip past that. The ring is measured in a unit of currency, mind you. Carats, to be exact. And I swear, we may be the only culture that has agreed to wear our partner's approximate net worth on our hands. And we do it in public. And it's calibrated to 1/10 of a carat, mind you. And then we quietly read other people's hands and we run that same math in our head. Is it real? That's a question that people actually think, and sometimes they actually ask. The stone is a number, and that number gets read as a proxy. And that proxy is for his earning power, for how much you're valued, for where the two of you land in the great invisible sorting. And the cruelty baked into that is quiet, but it has totality. It makes the invisible depth of your partner's love into a thing that can be compared at just a glance to the depth of everyone else's. And that is a wildly effective way to make sure that everybody always feels like they never bought enough. Don't you think? So here's the tell. This is the moment that you know that you're looking at a totem and not just a piece of jewelry. Watch what that ring does when a relationship is in trouble. A ring on a happy hand is joy, but a ring on a complicated hand becomes a scorekeeper. It keeps announcing permanence on a hand whose owner is no longer sure. It performs chosen to every stranger on a day that you feel anything but. It's the same brilliant, unchanging signal, whether the marriage is a sanctuary or a siege, and it does not dim itself. An object that keeps making the same promise regardless of whether the promise is still true or not, well, that's not a tool, that's a totem. And guess what? You wear it on the hand that you write with. Steelman, because this show always Steelmans, and this one matters. There's nothing wrong with wanting your commitment to be visible. Nothing wrong with a token, an heirloom, a beautiful object that could say us. Humans have marked their unions with objects for as long as there have actually been unions. That impulse is ancient and good, and it's not a marketing invention, people. What was invented, and we're getting there, don't worry, is the specific material, the specific price, and the specific belief that the size of the object is the readout of the size of the love. The ring isn't the problem. The conversion rate is the problem. Because it's the exchange rate that the industry quietly sets between dollars and devotion, and where one is allowed to measure the other. The ring comes with 2 rituals bolted to it, and they're both doing far more than they look like they're doing. The first is the proposal. And I want you to notice how completely scripted a spontaneous proposal actually is. Because the scripting is actually the tell. There is the kneel. There is the box. And the box only opens a specific way. And there is the question that everybody already knows the words to. There is also increasingly a photographer in the tree line, briefed in advance. And that photographer is there to capture the candid moment of total surprise that was in fact scheduled 3 weeks ago and required to give a deposit. The surprise is real and also produced. And then there's the announcement, the post, the hand, the flood of reactions. Because this particular ritual is never complete until it is witnessed. And now the witnessing is global and instant and counted. Now, here's what that ritual actually does underneath all that romance. It converts a very private decision into a public event. Because two people, in private, over months, quietly decided to spend their life together. That right there is the real thing. And it's undramatic, and surprisingly, it mostly happens in kitchens. The proposal takes that quiet, private thing and it stages it, it freezes it, it witnesses it, and it pins it to an object. It turns a process into a moment. And moments can be celebrated, photographed, announced. And this is the part that matters the most. They can be sold things. Because you cannot build an enormous industry around they gradually realized over 18 months. You build one around the moment. So what did the culture do? It built the moment. And it gave it a price of entry. And you guessed it if you're paying attention. The price of entry is the ring. The second ritual is much quieter, and it also never ends. It's the wearing. You put it on, you wear it every day, you possibly wear it for the rest of your life. You're going to touch it without thinking, you're going to turn it on your finger, and you're going to notice its absence when you take it off that one time to do the dishes. Your body memorizes it in the way that it memorizes a watch, or your actual wedding band, or a cross that you wear around your neck under your shirt every day. It then becomes how you perceive yourself and the map of yourself. Every day you wear it, and you re-perform the vow a little bit. You don't do that consciously, but an object on the hand is a tiny, consistent physical reminder of that promise. And reminders that live on the body are the most powerful kind that there is. Religions have always known this. You don't keep the sacred object in the drawer. You wear it, you touch it, and you let the body do the remembering. Put those together. A single staged, witnessed, photographed moment, and then a daily embodied act of wearing, and you have a complete ritual structure. And it's anchored in a moment. It's repeated in the body, and it's witnessed by everyone. It carries an emotional arc from the question to the yes to the life afterwards. This is not an accessory that we're talking about. This is a sacrament with a real price. Now, here's the monastic echo. Because there's always one, isn't there? A vow object isn't new. Humans have exchanged rings to seal promises for a very long time. You have a circle with no end, worn on the hand. It's the symbol of a thing that doesn't stop. That part is genuinely ancient and genuinely beautiful, by the way. But what is new, brand new to the 20th century new, is that the vow object has to be a diamond. And the diamond has to cost a certain fraction of your income. And the whole arrangement has to feel so old and so inevitable that questioning it feels like questioning love itself. They took a real sacrament and they slipped a sales target into it. And they did it so smoothly. Because here we are, 2 or 3 generations later, and we sincerely believe that the sales target was always part of the sacrament. Steelman again, loud and sincere. Rituals work. Marking a transition with a ceremony and an object is one of the healthiest things that human beings do. It's actually how the mind crosses from one chapter of life into the next. The engaged people glowing in those photos are not dupes. They're doing something deeply human and good. The ritual gives a shapeless, terrifying, enormous commitment, a shape that you can hold and stand inside of. None of that is fake. The feeling is real. The ritual delivers. All I'm asking you to notice is who wrote the part of the script that has a $sign in it. So now this is the part of the show where I lay out the staircase. Because nobody decides all at once to spend 2 months of their income on a small rock and then carry that same small rock around for 40 years through every kind of weather. You don't decide that. You climb to it, one step at a time. Each step is more reasonable to refuse than the last. So, I'm going to walk you up the staircase. So, step 1, that's the script. Before you've ever even shopped for anything, before you were ever even sure that you were going to propose, you already knew the rules. You know it should be a ring. You know it should be a diamond. And you know it should be a surprise. You also know roughly about how much it should cost. There's a number in your head, a fraction of your salary, and you did not put it there. You inherited it, and it was fully formed, and you experience it as common sense, a tradition, and you look at it as just how it's done. That's step 1, and that's the most important one, because it happens before you're ever even paying attention. And that script was installed before the shopping ever even started. Step 2 is the spend. You buy it, and it's a lot. Probably more than is comfortable. It's frequently bought on credit, and sometimes a genuinely destabilizing amount of money for a young person in that precise moment of their life trying to actually build a life. And here's why you do it anyway. Because that spend is going to read as proof. The size of the sacrifice standing in for the size of the love. And to spend carefully would feel like loving carefully. So you don't do that. The beauty of this step is that it's engineered to feel like devotion. And it genuinely does. Now, step 3 is the symbol. The ring goes on the finger. The announcement goes out. The relationship becomes public, legible, official, and witnessed. Because you're not just two people who love each other anymore. Now, you're engaged. And that's engaged with a capital E, mind you. It is actually a recognized social category with its own badge. The object has stopped being a token between two people, and it has become a status worn for everyone. This is a step where leaving would actually cost more than money. Though you won't actually feel that cost until much, much later. Step 4 is the weather. Time happens, because time always happens. The relationship turns out to be a real relationship, which means it has weather. It has good years and hard ones. It has doubt, change, growth, and for some of you, even an ending. None of that is a failure. That's actually just what being in one is. But if you'll notice what that ring does throughout all of it, what does it do? Nothing. That's what. It does keep signaling permanence, and it's got the same brilliant public unchanged announcement on a hand whose owner may be moving through the most difficult and uncertain season of her life. That signal no longer tracks with the reality because it was built to say one thing, and that one thing is forever, and it will always say it. Now that brings us to the final step, which is step 5, and that's the keeping. And here's where it lands at the far end for the people that it lands the hardest on. Whatever happens, you keep that ring. If the love holds, well, then it becomes an heirloom, infused with meaning, and eventually handed down, right? But if it doesn't, if that marriage ends, well, then you discover the thing that nobody actually warned you about. And that thing is that you cannot sell it for anything close to what it cost. and you cannot bring yourself to throw it away. So guess what? It goes in a drawer. An expensive, beautiful, brilliant little monument to a certainty that didn't survive. And you can neither cash it out nor let go of it. Either way, whether it's an heirloom or it goes in the drawer, the one thing that ring will not turn back into is the money that you spent and the simplicity that you had before that ring came into your life. And there's the entire trick laid bare. 4 of those 5 steps actually feel wonderful. Well, at least they feel fine. But the script feels like tradition, and the spend feels like love, and the symbol starts to feel like belonging. And that weather that we talked about, guess what? That's just life. Only the last step at the bad end hurts. And by the time that you get to it, that money that you spent is long gone, and the meaning is long set. You cannot warn somebody off of a staircase whose first 4 steps are made of pure joy. So we don't warn. We just turn the lights on and let you see the shape of the stairs that you're already standing on. So this is going to bring us to the third question. Does your loyalty to it outrun its actual usefulness? And here's where it actually gets genuinely strange. And it gets genuinely funny, but in a dark way, which is my favorite. Nonetheless, I'm going to take my time because this is the analytical heart of the show. The engagement ring is actually sold as an investment. It holds its value. It's an asset. It's forever. But the truth of the matter is that it's actually closer to the exact opposite. Because the moment that you walk out of that store, it loses a staggering fraction of its cost. Far more proportionately than even a new car driving right off the lot. You don't believe me? Well, try and sell it back. I'll bet you money that they're going to offer you a humiliating sliver of what you actually paid for it. There is essentially no consumer resale market that returns anything even remotely close to retail. Because the markup that you paid was never about the stone's value in the first place, nor was it about the resale value. It was actually about everything else. The marketing, the markup, and the meaning. Because you didn't buy an asset, you bought a story at the price of an asset. So I want you to sit with this particular phrase. A diamond is forever. Because that might be the most honest, dishonest slogan ever written. And it's doing 2 jobs at once. The romantic job is obvious. Your love is eternal. It's unbreakable. It's just like that stone. But there's a second meaning there that's hiding in plain sight. And it's almost a confession, actually. A diamond is forever because you can never sell it. Forever is also a description of how long that you'll be stuck with it. The slogan promised eternity and quietly guaranteed liquidity. And we read it as pure romance even 75 years later. That's not a slogan. That's actually a fantastic magic trick that was performed in public, slowly, on everybody. Now, why isn't there a resale market? Because the entire value of the diamond rests on the story, and used diamonds tend to tell the wrong story. A diamond's price was never really set by rarity. Diamonds are not geographically especially rare, and there's a well-documented history of the supply being deliberately controlled, being deliberately kept off the market in carefully metered amounts, so that the scarcity could be manufactured and the price could keep high. The thing that you were told was precious because it was rare was actually precious because someone decided on purpose to make it look rare. And a secondhand diamond will actually threaten that whole arrangement. Because if people start buying used, then that manufactured scarcity springs a leak. So the culture was taught, very gently mind you, that you don't buy used engagement rings. That a ring should be new, just like that love that you're feeling. Which conveniently strangled the resale market in its cradle. Which conveniently kept the prices high. which conveniently means that you, holding your ring, are holding something with almost no exit value and a powerful story about why you'd never want an exit anyway. And then there's the rule. You know the one, because it's quite famous. It's the rule that says that you have to spend a certain number of months' salary. I'm sure that you heard it. You probably even have a number in mind yourself. But here's the thing. There's no real rule. There never was. The months of salary guidelines were invented by the diamond industry's own advertising. It started small, and then it quietly increased over the decades. It started out as 1 month, then it became 2, and then in some places it was 3. And that's because the people who profit from the spending are the exact same people who are setting the price and telling you how much to spend. It is a sales target that's actually wearing the costume of a tradition. And it worked so well that people now feel guilty for spending anything under that. They feel like they're shortchanging their fiance in some kind of way. And that number was in fact just reverse engineered from someone else's revenue goals. You're not being cheap if you spend less. You're simply declining to hit someone else's sales quota. So why do we even keep them? We keep them through divorces, through decades, and through the dead obvious fact that the thing won't resell. I'll tell you why. Because it's the exact same reason that the unused exercise bike stays in the corner, honestly. And I did a complete and entire episode on that one. It's because selling it isn't a transaction. It's a verdict. Because to sell the ring would be to formally declare that what it stood for is actually over. The drawer is easier than that particular declaration. So it sits. And the industry is perfectly happy for it to just sit. The reason, at least to me, seems very, very clear. It's because that every ring that is sitting in a drawer, instead of moving through the resale market, is a ring that doesn't have to compete with a new one that's coming into that case. Your grief is very quietly doing the cartel a favor. The ring you can't bear to sell is actually helping to pop up the price of the ring that someone else is about to buy. So that brings me to another Steelman. Because I mean it. An heirloom is real, and it's a beautiful thing. A ring passed down through a family who's worn by a grandmother, a mother, and now you? Well, that's carrying all of them on your hand. It has genuine meaning, and it's exactly the kind money cannot manufacture. Which is precisely why it's the one kind that the industry cannot fully sell you. Loyalty beyond use, in the best case, isn't really a trap at all. It's love stored into an object across time. And I'm not here to flatten that in any kind of way. What I am here to do is to point out that the same mechanism that lets a ring become a priceless heirloom is the exact same mechanism that leaves a divorced person holding a very expensive object that they can't convert and they can't release. It's the same forever. Two completely different prices to pay for it. So here's the heart of it, and I'm not going to rush it, so settle in just a little bit. The engagement ring was never really solving a jewelry problem, obviously. You can signify a lifelong commitment with a band of metal, or a tattoo, or a word, or nothing at all but the life that you actually build with this other person. People have bound themselves to each other with string, with iron, and with a sentence that was simply said in front of a few witnesses. And that's been through the entire history of the species. For free, I might add. So the expensive diamond is actually solving a very different problem. And once you see which one that is, it honestly brings the whole thing into focus. The ring solves a legibility problem. A commitment on its own is invisible. It's two people deciding to stay in the most important thing that can happen between two people. And it's completely undetectable from the outside. It lives in private, in 1,000 small undramatic choices, in kitchens, and in the dark. And humans have always needed a way to make the invisible commitment visible to themselves, to each other, and crucially to everyone else. Because we are at our hearts social animals. And a bond the group can see is a bond that the group can support and hold you to it. The ring makes the invisible visible. It takes the private promise and renders it public, durable, and this is the engineered part, expensive. Because an expensive signal is a credible signal. A promise that costs nothing is easy to make, and it's just as easy to break. A promise that costs 2 months' income is, as the logic runs anyway, a promise with, what's that turn of phrase? Skin in the game. The cost isn't a bug. The cost is actually the proof, which is exactly why the industry keeps inflating the cost and calling it romance. Because in a costly signal economy, spending more reads as loving more. They didn't have to convince you the diamond was valuable. But what they did have to convince you was that the size of the sacrifice was the measure of the love. And then they got to set the price of love. And underneath that legibility problem is the older, rawer one. The need to be chosen, to be selected on purpose out of everyone, and to have the selection made real and public and permanent so it can't be quietly taken back. The hunger is bottomless, and it is ancient, and it is not silly. We are a species that organizes its entire emotional life around belonging, around being wanted, and about not being left behind. That ring is a portable, wearable, glittering answer to the most frightening question that a person can carry. Am I someone who gets chosen? And to wear that yes on your hand, where you can see it whenever that fear creeps back in, that is a genuinely powerful balm for a genuinely deep wound. The industry didn't invent that wound. It found the wound and it built the most beautiful, most expensive bandage in the world. And then it priced that bandage like medication. So now I want to wrap everything back into this week. On the main feed, we talked about the healing boyfriend, the partner you're trying to fix, the love that's really a rescue, the belief that if you can just save him, then the saving will finally prove that you're the one who matters. Look at what those two things share. Both are about earning a love that feels conditional. The fixer earns it through labor. If I heal him, I'll make myself indispensable and unleavable. The ring offers to earn it through proof. If I had the ring, then it's official, then I'm chosen, then I can stop being afraid. They are two answers to the exact same fear. And it's that you are not on your own enough to be kept. And both answers point you outward, towards the project or towards the object, and away from the harder work that is much cheaper and a much more durable thing. And that is the slow internal work of believing that you're worth keeping without it needing to be certified, renovated, or appraised. Now to the cultural piece. And that's the one that makes this a totem episode and not just a rant about money. The ring has gotten heavier over the last century, not lighter. It's gotten more important, more expensive, and more central. And that's strange, because by every measure, we are now free to commit any way that we want to, more than ever. So why does this object matter now? That's the same answer that we keep finding on this show. Because the other things that used to witness a commitment have thinned out. There used to be a thick, solid world around a couple. Extended family that lived next door, a church or a congregation of some sort, a town, a stable set of neighbors who would watch you grow up and would witness and enforce and hold a marriage across decades. That web did a lot of work that the ring now does alone. It made commitments visible and durable through sheer dense human presence. And as that web has frayed, as we've gotten more mobile, more private, more atomized, and more likely to build a marriage far from anyone who not either of you is a child, the witnessing had to go somewhere, and it went into the object. The ring is now carrying by itself on one finger the weight of an entire community. No wonder it has to be so expensive. We've asked a very small rock to do the job of an entire village. Steelman again, and this is the warmest one, I promise. Because I want to end the analysis where the humans are. The need that I spoke about is real. It is not foolish. And the people who feel it are not marks. The wish is simply to be chosen and to have it be real and witnessed and lasting. And that is maybe the most human wish that there is. And a ring can genuinely, honestly carry some of it. For a lot of people, the ring is exactly what it claims to be. It's a true thing that they're very glad to wear. And I am not taking that away from anyone whatsoever. All I am doing is naming the deal underneath it. That the industry took the realest need that you could possibly have, and they quietly made the depth of it in measurable carats. So that a feeling that should have been beyond price got a price. And that price kept going up. And you were taught to read the bill as a love letter. Keep the ring. If it's serving you, if it carries the love that you're glad to carry, and if it means what you want it to mean, by all means keep it. Wear it, enjoy it, and you can skip the rest of what I'm about to say. Go on about your day. The history doesn't make your ring any less yours. A campaign can be the reason that an object exists, and the object can still hold something completely real. Both are true. Most things have a receipt attached somewhere anyway. But know what it's doing. Because the same ring carries different cargo depending on what need is riding in it. If it's carrying love, the actual feeling that you made into an object because that feeling was too big to hand over bare, then it's doing the oldest and best thing that a token can do. And the price that you paid is between you and your own sense of what it was worth. No notes. Wear it in good health, boo. If it's carrying proof, if some part of you needed that ring to be official before you could believe that you were chosen, if you needed the size of it to settle a question about how much that you are worth, then let me gently say this. That ring can never actually answer that question for you. And it never could. Whether you're someone who gets kept is not a question that a stone can close for you, no matter how many carats you throw at it. And the industry's entire genius was convincing you that it could. The answer to that question was never going to be on your hand. It is always going to be in a place that is somewhere much, much harder to reach. And if it's in a drawer, if you're one of the people holding a beautiful, expensive thing that used to mean something and it doesn't anymore, and you can't sell it without grief, and you can't toss it without any guilt, then I want you to hear this, because maybe nobody else will say it to you. You are allowed to let it go. The ring is not the love, and it is not the loss. It is simply the object that both happen to be attached to. Selling it isn't erasing what was real. Keeping it isn't honoring it. The grief was never stored in the stone itself. You get to decide what you do next with that object. As the person that you are right now at this moment in time, and not the person who stood in that store or knelt in that grass all those years ago. Because the hand will be fine, by the way, whether it's bare or branded, heirloom or nothing at all. The hand was a hand before there was anything on it, and it'll keep doing the only thing that ever actually mattered, and that's reaching for other hands. That part was never for sale. They just convinced us for about 75 years that it came with a stone. I'm April Rain. This could be your totem.